Now, everybody's obsessed with Snowden. Is he a good guy or a bad guy? And, of course, the great majority of the press has made up its mind. Bad guy, how dare you do this to our friends in the government? I love those guys. I go to the cocktails with them all the time, and we have the cute little hot dogs buried in those pastries. Delicious. Everybody has martinis. Do they still have martinis these days? Yeah, either way, Bob Schieffer, very upset about this. Now, look, I have a soft spot in my heart for Bob Schieffer. He's old school. But the reality is, unfortunately, he's just like the rest of them. And listen how he goes after Snowden in fairly irrational ways.
Men and women who led the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., they are true heroes. I'm not ready to put Edward Snowden in that category. For one thing, I don't remember Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks running off and hiding in China. The people who led the civil rights movement were willing to break the law and suffer the consequences. That's a little different than putting the nation's security at risk and running away. I know 11 people who died or lost a member of their family on 9/11. My younger daughter lived in Manhattan then. It was 6 hours before we knew she was safe. I'm not interested in going through that again. I don't know yet if the government has overreached since 9/11 to reinforce our defenses, and we need to find out. What I do know, though, is that these procedures were put in place and are being overseen by officials we elected, and we should hold them accountable. I think what we have in Edward Snowden is just a narcissistic young man who has decided he is smarter than the rest of us. I don't know what he is beyond that, but he is no hero. If he has a valid point, and I'm not even sure he does, he would greatly help his cause by voluntarily coming home to face the consequences.
We appreciate that report from Pravda. The government is always correct, and you must come home to face the consequences of your actions. That's not a government official. That's a so-called member of the press, the watchdogs of the government. You must answer to the government, Snowden. I remember 9/11. I'm still scared shitless over 9/11. Oh, I don't want any kind of security threat. So I will give over all my rights, and how dare you complain about the rest of Americans finding out that it turns out the government had secretly been taking our rights to privacy away. You're supposed to be a journalist. In a different part of that commentary, he was talking about how he has friends in the government and he trusts them. But that's the problem, Bob. You got friends in the government. You guys hang out together. But what the hell kind of irrational spiel is this? Oh, he's not Rosa Parks. No shit, Sherlock. Really? Oh, he's not Martin Luther King Jr. He's also not Nelson Mandela. I mean, so that's your main complaint with him? He's no Martin Luther King Jr.? Okay, he didn't chop down a cherry tree either. That's not much of a complaint against the guy. Now, what would you do if you were Snowden? Remember what happened to Bradley Manning? And by the way, did Bob Schieffer give credit? Did any of the rest of these guys in the mainstream media give credit to Bradley Manning for not going to Hong Kong? He stayed right here. He stayed within the American government. And what did they do? Put him in solitary confinement for 9 months, stripped him down naked every night, wouldn't let him sleep. Even a colonel that's presiding over his case during the court-martial said that it was excessive treatment. It's kind words for another way of referring to torture. Solitary confinement is a form of torture. And by the way, human rights organizations across the world have said that about our treatment of Bradley Manning. And you're supposed to voluntarily go through that? Bradley Manning's trial just began 3 years after he was arrested. What happened to a fair and speedy trial? Oh, no. Why don't you just turn yourself in? Turn yourself in. This is the guy who's supposed to get information about the government and report it to you from sources like Snowden. Instead, he hates Snowden. Oh, I'm scared. The government told me there's going to be another 9/11. Snowden, shut up. What did you go to China for? Why didn't you stay here where we can intimidate you and prosecute you and put you in jail and strip you naked every night and do all sorts of unspeakable things to you? Why didn't you stay? Look at how kind we were to Bradley Manning. So Bob Schieffer, Bradley Manning stayed. Is he MLK? Is he Rosa Parks? Next week, are you going to come and do a little spiel about how awesome Bradley Manning is? And if you don't get information from these guys, how the hell are you going to do your reporting? But I do know, and that's the real problem. And Schieffer is only a symbol in this case for the entire mainstream media. The reason is they don't get their reports from people who are watchdogs of the government or whistleblowers of the government. They get their reports from the government. They've become Pravda. Oh, yes, government, what do you say? Pentagon, you are of course right. I will report to everybody. Everybody be incredibly scared. If it's because of people like Snowden, we will have another 9/11 and your daughters will be murdered. That's what the government says. That's what the Pentagon says. That's what the Democrats say. That's what the Republicans say. Thanks a lot, Bob. I don't know why I had a soft spot for him. I don't know why. I like the old guy. Just because I guess he wasn't as bad as Meet the Press and This Week and CNN, right? From time to time, he asks an interesting question. But I'm done with him. This narcissistic young man, how dare you turn on the government like that and try to give information to reporters? Are there any real reporters left in the mainstream media? And you wonder why Snowden went to Glenn Greenwald in The Guardian. Gee, I can't quite figure it out. If he'd gotten to Bob Schieffer or CBS, I guess they would have bitch slapped him and said, get the fuck out of here, I'm going to report you to the government. Who the fuck would come to you, Bob? Who would come to you? Who would come and say, hey, Bob, I got sensitive information on the government? And then Bob would say, well, I got friends in the government, man. Oh, that looks like you're going to do damage to the government. All right, I'm going to turn you in right now before anybody gets a chance. So you think you're right about this, Bob? Hell no. Wrong again, Bob.